Before we jump in this morning, I want to let you know about a really special Sunday that's coming up just in a few weeks. On November the 6th, we are having here on campus something that we refer to every year as All In Sunday. So All In Sunday, for those of you who have kiddos, a lot of times we have people that ask us this, hey, do you have Child Dedication Sunday or do you do anything like that? So our philosophy here at Foundation is that we believe that we want to give children the opportunity to own their faith, not to inherit it because their parents are followers of Jesus, not to borrow it from their parents, but to honestly own it, to have ownership of what they believe. I tell all the kids that I meet with, or that our kids' first director, Robin, and I meet with when they talk about giving their lives to Jesus, I say, I never want to have a kid that grew up in Foundation 20 years from now sit down in front of a pastor and say, I had no idea what I was doing when I decided to give my life to Jesus. And I want to be 100% on that, like absolutely zero failures. And that's what we try to do. We try to make sure that we have really great conversations with kids as they're discovering, hey, who is Jesus and do I want to give my life to him? And so that's the way we kind of look at the child dedications. It's a long, lengthy process. However, what we do participate in and encourage is All In Sunday, which is not so much an opportunity for you as a parent or as a guardian to dedicate a child. It is an opportunity for you to dedicate yourself to the opportunity, giving that child the opportunity to fully own their own faith. It's an opportunity for you to say, hey, you know what? My family is going all in to give them the greatest opportunity to discover and to own a relationship with Jesus. And so that's coming up on November the 6th. You can register for it on the Church Center app, and you do have to register. It's not just me talking here on stage. There's a lot that goes into All In Sunday, and so it requires a good bit of prep on our staff side, so it's not something that can happen last minute. So for sure, please sign up. We always have families every year that like the Saturday night before, they're like, hey, can we jump in on this Sunday? I totally forgot. And we have to tell them there's no chance we can pull off what we typically have to pull off for your kid for tomorrow morning. There's no way it's just impossible for us. It requires a lot of moving parts to get everything here. So for sure, don't be that family, right? Like right now. I'll give you a brief reminder when we wrap up our gathering because for sure you're probably like, oh, he doesn't mean register right now. I mean, honestly, if you want to register right now, it might not be a bad idea. But for sure, I'll give you a reminder as we wrap up our gathering for you to kind of take a look at it. We're going to play a game this morning where I'm just going to say a word, and I want you to say it back. No, not that back. I'm going to say a word, and I want you to say back to me the opposite of the word. So I'm going to say one out loud. It's like a contest. There's points. There's buckets of pride to be given for whoever shouts back the opposite first. Those who are watching online, you can type with your little fingers. We can't hear you, but I'm sure our online hosts will interact with you there. So I'm going to say a word. We're going to start easy. We're going to get a little more difficult as we go. Maybe you're smarter than the 9 o'clock crew because we got to the end and it was pretty slow reaction time. They're like, we don't want those kind of things. Here we go. Number one. And again, it's just shout out. There's no raising hands. It's just shout out. Here we go. Ready? Good. Wow. Someone's really late over here. I don't know. Oh, that's okay. I'm not afraid to shame people. Last week, that was not good. Yep. Sorry. Woo. Bad. Number two, let's move on. Stop. Hey, this is good. Fast. Oh, you're really fast. That was really good. Exciting. Ooh, a little slower. 9 o'clock wasn't that slow. They didn't get slow till like 7, 8, 9. Here we go. Delicious. Nasty. Somebody said nasty. Nasty. Delightful. Oh, miserable. You got one person saving you. That's it. That's it. Okay. Yeah, it's a team. Okay, here we go. This is a hard one. Arduous. Hey, okay. Someone went, huh? Aardvark? Number 8, unique. Plain, ordinary, okay, yeah. Common, that's good. Number 9, artistic. Not artistic. Yeah, yeah. Last one. Anxiety. Okay? Yeah. So I Googled this a bunch, and I just typed the sentence in differently to see what people would say. What's the opposite of anxiety? You know, if you're not anxious and you're the other side of anxious, what would it be? And so I had like 6 or 7 different things, and almost all of them came up with the majority of what you said, which was peace. The opposite of anxiety is peace, which it seems to be fairly common. It makes sense. And in fact, the definition of peace is freedom from disturbance, tranquility. Does that make sense? I mean, if we're anxious, if we've got a lot of anxiety happening, and we're saying, hey, we don't want to be anxious anymore. What do we want to be? Well, we want to be free from disturbance, free from emotional disturbance, mental disturbance, free from this inward turmoil that's happening. We would love to be in a very tranquil setting. Tranquility would be great. This would be good. If I could get a little tranquility in my life, I wouldn't be so anxious. I want to get rid of the anxiety and replace it with calm, with just breathe easy. The problem is that when we think like this, which again, we're just reading definitions, and it makes sense, like logically this makes sense. The problem is it makes this verse that I'm about to read out of the book of John really awkward for us. It makes it pretty difficult, to be honest with you. John is a really good friend of Jesus, probably one of the closest friends that Jesus has. And he says this in his book, in chapter 16, verse 33. He's quoting Jesus, and so this is Jesus speaking, but it's in John's book. Jesus says this, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Now, that's interesting. That's interesting. It's interesting that he says, hey, here's the deal. I'm getting ready to tell you some big things. I've got a mission for you. He's preparing the people who are following him to say, hey, I've got a life that you ought to be living that kind of resonates with this kingdom-minded purpose for something bigger than yourselves. And he's saying, and I tell you all this because, and I need to let you know, in me, I want you to have peace. However, in this world, you're going to have trouble. But take heart, I've overcome the world. He wants them to have peace, knowing there's trouble coming. He said, look, did you notice how it's worded? He said, you will have trouble. That's a for sure thing. It's not, there's a really good chance you're going to have trouble. No, it takes a step further. He says, you will have trouble. However, he says, but I want you to have peace. He didn't say, I want you to not have trouble, or I want you to have trouble. He just says, it's a sure thing. There is nothing my wants or unwants can do about it. Trouble is coming. However, we do have an option to have peace. He says, I want you to have peace because you're going to have trouble. So I want you to have peace. It's almost like peace can't be the absence of trouble. The peace isn't the tranquility that's in this definition of peace. He uses this phrase, but take heart. What does that mean? Take heart. When I think of take heart, I'm thinking like Braveheart. You know what I'm saying? Let's go, take heart. He didn't say take heart in it, but this is what I picture. Freedom! You know what I'm talking about? You know the scene? Cutting it right off. You know what I'm talking about? Y'all haven't seen the movie, have you? You're going to see it, and you're like, oh my gosh. I know. It's awful. Makes me flinch. Take heart. Have confidence. He said, hey, come on. Let's go. Be aware. Okay. All right, Jesus. The Apostle Paul, church planner Paul, he has this to say about anxiety. In Philippians 4, 6, and 7, he says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Let me read that first part again. The church planner, Paul, he says, do not be anxious about everything. LOL. That's what I'm thinking. Like, okay, all right, Paul. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Nice TED Talk. This was great. Completely useless, but thank you for giving us some advice. Do not be anxious about anything. But instead, what do you need to do? Oh, just pray. If you'll just pray and then write some petitions to God, get a bunch of signatures on it, right? Not that kind of petition. He's just like, hey, would you bring your request to God? That's what he's saying. So just choose, just decide. I ain't gonna be anxious. I'm not gonna be anxious about this. All I'm gonna do is talk to God about it. That's all I'm gonna do. Let me ask you, those of you who struggle with anxiety, is that what works? You just say, hey, God, I wanna let you know I'm anxious, but now I'm not gonna be because now I talk to you and I'm fine. Is that how it works? I understand what Paul's trying to say. Though there is something really interesting in this verse. In verse 7, it says, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. I feel like my heart needs to be guarded when I have anxious moments. Like I feel like, okay, now, like I'm with you here, because for sure the anxious thoughts, the anxiety, it's coming with weapons drawn, in my place. And so I need some guarding. This is good. But also what stands out there is he says, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. Now that puts me in a different place. If I go back to what Jesus said, I want you to have peace in me because you will have trouble. And then we read what church planner Paul says, where he says, hey, I want to give you peace. Don't be anxious about anything. I want to give you peace. I want to give you peace that transcends or goes beyond, extends past anything you can understand. So when we use the word understand, we mean two things. All the book knowledge that you can get in the world, take all the book knowledge, just pretend we read all the books real quick, and we got all the knowledge and we put it in a bowl. It's a big bowl. So a big bowl. And then we took also the experience, the living experience of just being experienced, just life situations and going through things. We took all of that learning and knowledge, also put it in the bowl. That's everything we have the capacity to understand. All the book knowledge, all the life experience knowledge, all in one place. We put it all in there, mixed it all up. Every single thing we could possibly ever understand or know in all of human history, right there in the bowl. And he says, I have a peace that goes beyond, extends beyond anything that's in the bowl. In other words, you're not going to get book knowledge to understand it or life experience knowledge to understand it. That's interesting. That's interesting. I mean, if that's the case, then maybe I can understand why we can have this peace that Jesus is talking about, yet still be in the midst of the opposite of tranquility, the opposite of disturbance, which is lots of disturbance and lots of chaos. That our world can still be full of both of those things, yet have peace, even though we do not have tranquility or calmness or any of those things. Maybe. So if I were to buy into this, if I were to buy into these, piecing these ideas of peace together, where would I go and find this peace? I mean, do I just say, hey, anxiety, aisle 1, can I take a number? How do I do this? When we read the Bible, there's two places that it kind of gives us a clue about. The first one is also in a letter that Paul wrote to one of the churches that he helped shepherd and lead. It's in a book called Galatians, chapter 5. It says this, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And so he says, hey, if you want to give your entire life to Jesus, something that's very clear that from the teachings of Jesus and the words of Jesus, he says, hey, I'm going to go away, but I'm going to give you this gift of the Spirit of God who's going to take my place. And after Jesus leaves, the Holy Spirit comes and it begins to live in, dwell in those who give their lives to Jesus, followers of Jesus. And that's what happens. And he says, hey, the fruit or the result of the Spirit of God in your life, one of those little pieces of that entire fruit is peace. And so if we want to have peace, if we're chasing after peace, then we ought to have access to that peace if the Spirit of God is a part of our life. And the Spirit of God is a part of our life if we have really given our entire lives to Jesus, right? So we're putting two and two together. So for sure, if we want this peace that goes beyond the little bowl of our understanding of both experience we can gain from living and all the book knowledge in the world, if we want it to go past that, that's one place to get it. Okay. The second place we find is in a very familiar Christmas passage. We're getting closer to Christmas. I don't know if y'all realize that. We're just like 7-8 weeks away, you know. I know it's crazy, isn't it? I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I saw some of you groan. Don't groan. It's beginning to look a lot like, if you've been to Lowe's, you know it's beginning to look like Christmas. Sorry, Home Depot, my bad. Where's Joey? Where is Joey? I saw you in here. Okay, there you go. My apologies. For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given. And the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So not only do we have the Holy Spirit, or Spirit of God that lives inside of us, that the result of his being a part of our life is peace. We also have Jesus, who evidently has a title, Prince of Peace. In other words, that he has authority over peace. He exercises authority over. He's the Prince of Peace. So that's it. It's that simple. So give your life to Jesus and get baptized, and then you got the Holy Spirit, and you know Jesus, and everything's fine, right? That's it. No more sleepless nights. No more sitting up where you can't get rested and can't. It's done, right? That's it. You know, I think peace is good. I think peace is really good. But I'm honestly not convinced that's what we're actually looking for. In fact, it's not that I'm not convinced. I'm actually convinced that peace is actually the wrong thing to look for. In fact, I think I'd like to make a case that it's not the opposite of anxiety at all. I want to tell you a story out of the life of Jesus. It's a story that has the three key ingredients to anxiety in it: fear, worry, and doubt. And all three of these ingredients are put in this one place, and the anxiety level in the room is just through the roof. You can barely contain it. Jesus' really good friend John tells us about it, and I think this will illustrate what I'm trying to say. The setting for this story takes place post-resurrection. So Jesus has been crucified on the cross. A few days later, on that first Sunday, that Easter Sunday, Jesus resurrects from the dead. And there's only a few people that have seen him. A lot of people have not seen him, but word is starting to get around. There's these rumors that are flying around, but no one can confirm it except for a few people, and they were women. And so in the first century, you didn't take the testimony of a woman for anything. They couldn't testify in court because they just were evil people, evidently. I'm not sure. That's just what they were thinking. So you can't trust a woman for sure in the first century. And so the women were the ones that we're talking about. So it's but they're women, right? So are we really going to trust that? That's what they were thinking. And so the followers of Jesus have found themselves locked in a room. The door is barred. There's no way in. There's no way out except for the door that's completely locked from the inside. And they're all huddled there together. Every single one of them. They're all sitting. Well, not every single one of them. There's one missing. But there's all of them right there together. They're hanging out together. And they are scared to death. You know why they're scared? Because they think they're next. They think they're next. They think that Jesus, for sure, was just the first crucifixion in a group of family members. And so for sure, as they start walking through this, they think that they are going to be the ones hung on the cross next. And so that's why the door is locked. That's why they've huddled in a secret location where no one else knows where they're at, because they're trying to figure out. They are scared to death. The fear is, again, it's palpable. You can feel the tension in the room. John tells us that Jesus appears in the room. The door doesn't unlock, the door doesn't open. Jesus is just there. And you know what Jesus says in the midst of their fear? Peace be with you. Fast forward a little bit. Same type setting. Jesus is about to, he's telling them that, hey, I've got a plan. Like, okay, good, this is good. We need a plan because it's great that you're alive. This is good. They're still looking for us, right? This is good. You got a plan. And he's like, yeah, I want to send you out. Send us out. No. I thought we were going to do like a plan, like dig a hole in the ground and like tunnel somewhere safe, like Egypt or something. That's a plan we were thinking. Or the way you jumped in this room right here, can we jump into another room? Can we all like hold together, hold like a shoe and do a swirly? That's Harry Potter. I'm just kidding. Like, can we figure something out? You know what I'm saying? Can we figure something out? He says, no, I'm actually, the way that the Father sent me, I'm going to send you. And so their worry goes through the roof. Their fear is already there, but they're like, oh, we were scared enough in the secret location. Nobody knows where we are. How did you find out, by the way, Jesus? But nobody knows we're here. In fact, nobody knows how to get in. And so our fear was already here, but you're saying you're going to send us out of this room? Not only just send us out, not send us on an escape route, you're going to send us out the way the Father sent you. We know how that ended, Jesus. We heard. It still ends with us on a cross if we're going to end up like you. Worries through the roof. You know what Jesus says to him? Peace be with you. Same phrase. Peace be with you. We fast forward again. Same setting. Same setting. Thomas wasn't with them when the first little get-together happened. They went and told Thomas. Thomas was a good friend of Jesus. Like, hey, Jesus is alive. And he's like, no, he's not. I don't think so. It's like, no, dude, he is. He is. Believe me, I'm not a woman. That's what they're saying. Hey, I'm not a woman. You can believe me. He says, you know what? I ain't believing nobody until I put my hands in the wounds in his wrists, see the wounds in his feet, the scar on his side. That's the only thing that convinced me. Only thing that'll convince me. And they gathered together and Jesus shows up. And Jesus shows up in the midst of the most doubtful place on the planet. Thomas is full of doubt. Complete defiance. He has so much doubt. And Jesus shows up and he looks at Thomas and he says, can you guess? Peace be with you. Now, there's something that goes along with this peace be with you, though. He says this in addition to that. He says, Thomas, stop doubting and believe. He says, stop doubting and believe. You see, the truth is, peace is good for overcoming fear, anxiety, and doubt. For sure. So we need peace, right? We need peace. So let's try it. Let's try it. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand and to admit, hey, I'm going through anxiety right now. But just for those of you who are experiencing anxiety right now in real time, I'm just going to try it real quick. You ready? Here we go. Peace be with you. Did I fix you? You good? If so, you owe me a lot of money. Whatever you were going to pay your counselor, I want to see it. Cash, $2 bills, please. No, that didn't work. It didn't work. So the special thing isn't in Jesus saying, peace be with you. Obviously, we need peace. We want peace, for sure. We got to have some peace. But the truth is, the key to overcoming anxiety isn't peace. Peace is the result of what actually cures anxiety. Peace is the result of the opposite of anxiety. You know what the opposite of anxiety is? Trust. Trust. Trust leads to peace. Let's think about it. Jesus is saying, hey, in this world, you're going to have trouble. I want you to have peace. In me, he says. I want you to have peace in me. Like, well, I want the peace too. I want that. Paul is saying, don't be anxious about anything. Instead, take your requests to God. And there's a peace that passes or transcends all understanding. You've got all the knowledge, all the learned, and all the experience you put in the bowl, goes past all those things. But there's a peace that you got access to, that we can give, that I can give. He says, I'm willing to give it to you. Now, our definition of peace is the absence of disturbance, tranquility. And Jesus is saying, no, I've got a peace that doesn't make sense in your definition of peace. I've got a peace that you will not understand and can't really wrap your mind around. But here's the truth. I'm just going to be straight up with you, Jesus says. That I can't stop the bad stuff from coming. To which I respond to and say, well, Jesus, how did you overcome the world in? What world did you overcome? Did you overcome the sunshine and rainbows world? Like, what was the point? What was the point? Like, come on, you didn't do a very good job overcoming the world if you can't stop anything from happening. I'm still anxious. Anxiety's in the world. You didn't overcome that, did you? Was that not around when you were overcoming the world? Did that come out of was it a fruit of you overcoming the world and this old new evil sprang up? I get frustrated with it. I talk to so many people who have given up on God and they are furious at God because of this. You claim to overcome the world, but you can't even overcome my heartbreak. You claim to overcome the world, but you can't even overcome the shame that sits in my life because of the things I've done. You claim to overcome the world, but you can't overcome the shame that's in my life because of something that was done to me that I had no control over, that was forced upon me. But you claim to overcome the world? Some God you are. Trust. And Jesus says, here's the deal. I've overcome the world. What I didn't overcome, what I chose not to overcome was your free will or anyone else's free will. And so here's what you can't affect. You can't affect good's going to win. You can't affect evil will be put away forever. You can't affect that there's a new heaven and a new earth and there is nothing you can do to stop it. You cannot affect that he's going to redeem the world of all of their sins for every single person who puts their faith and trust and gives their life to him. You can't change any of that. There's nothing on the planet you can do on your own or with any army you've got. You can't do any of it. You can't stop the world from falling apart and evil passing away. You can't do any of it. He says, but I didn't touch your own decision-making process. That's still on you. But he did overcome the world so that he could still gift that to us. Or he said, I could have made you puppets and robots, but I decided, no, I've overcome that, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to continue to decide. But the rest of it's out of our hands, it's out of our control. He's overcome it all, and there's nothing we can do about it. But the space in between, the stuff that sits there between our decisions and the decisions of other people, those things are the bad that's still going to happen. Who can we trust? Can we trust ourselves? No, because we're part of the problem. We're part of the people. This is, hey, in this world you'll have trouble. We create some of the trouble. Can we trust other people? No, because they create some of the trust either. They create some of the problems also, right? We can't start with, well, I'm going to dig myself out of the hole. Before I decide to give my life to Jesus, I got to get my stuff together, and I can trust me. No, you can't trust you. Don't trust you. No. Right, well, my dad or my granddad or whatever, fill in the blank, whoever it is you can trust, my mom, they know so much. That's where I'm going to start. I'm going to trust them. And all of a sudden, you know what? They have a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, or goodness, they're just sick and don't have all their stuff together between their ears, and they give you some bad advice. Like, man, I can't even trust them no more. I told you not to start trusting with them. You start trusting Jesus. And Jesus is the only one you can always trust. All of our trust has got to start with him. Jesus said, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. He said, hey, your trust needs to begin with me. Not start with your parents because they were followers of Jesus, and now I'm going to trust Jesus. That's backwards. You got to own a relationship with Jesus that does not change regardless of what anyone else does to let you down. Because that's what we do. We do let one another down. We don't always bring our A game when the other person needs our A game. Sometimes we don't even know we're in the game, and that's what they need. And they came to us because, goodness, they just need someone just to be there. But you don't even know that they need you to be there in the moment because they can't say it out loud. And yeah, we let each other down. We don't even know we're letting each other down sometimes. But we can always start and trust Jesus. The question is, how do you build trust? How do you build trust? Well, I want to give you a really practical exercise to do this week. So if you struggle with anxiety, then what I'm going to ask you to do is going to take a little bit of time. And I'm sure in your mind, you might say, I don't have time to do an exercise, right? Let me just tell you, as someone who has walked through anxiety myself, yes, we do, because we think about everything too much. We've got plenty of time. We're constantly thinking about it. Just take some of that time and let's just sit down and do the exercise. We've got time. At 2:30 in the morning, we'll have time, right? I just want you to get out a piece of paper. I want you to think about the situation that's making you anxious. And I want you to write down your immediate response. You know what? This is my reaction. This is how I should handle it. Your anxious response. Just write it down. And then I want you to draw a line under it. And I want you to write the name Jesus. And I want you to think through, now, if Jesus perfectly handled this situation, what would he do? And I just want you to write it down. I don't want you to think about it. It's not going to work. You cannot just think about this. You need to write it down. Write down everything you're thinking of. This is what he would do. This is how he would do it. The whole thing. And then I just want you to read both of them. That's it. I just want you to read both of them and say, okay, all right, so this is my growth. How do I go from here to here? The way you build trust is you got to do something. You got to have some shared experience. But you've got to have some shared experience that's allowed to fail. You might decide in the moment of that anxious thought, you know what, I'm going to give the Jesus way a try, and you might fail miserably at it, right? But here's the thing, even in failure of trying to pull off what Jesus pulled off, even still we learn, man, I was so close to doing what Jesus did. And so I'm not going to let that talk me out of my anxiety leading me to follow Jesus, but I am going to let that failure say, you know what? At least I know that I had a really good chance of getting closer to succeeding if I had been able to follow through on what I know Jesus would have done. We've already made progress. This isn't a take one simple small phrase and tattoo it on your arm and now you're fixed. No, it's going to take work. Anxious thoughts require you to say something out loud. And if you can start by writing on a piece of paper and looking at those thoughts, I guarantee there'll be a couple of you this week, if you decide to do it, you'll write down your immediate response and you'll read it and you will laugh out loud. Like, I can't believe that's what I would do. Like, that makes no sense. But that is me. Why would I do that? That's a really great moment to be in. Understanding that our ways will lead to failure before we do them, that is growth. That's an incredible place to be. We ought to be thankful that we can recognize ahead of time, you know what, I've identified my way's not working. Now, I don't know if I got enough strength not to do my way. Because honestly, sometimes our anxiety becomes the path of least resistance, doesn't it? I know, because I've struggled with it myself. About a year and a half ago, I started waking up in the middle of the night with panic attacks. I have no idea. I wasn't having a nightmare. I wasn't dreaming. I would just wake up and I couldn't breathe. And of course, all the lights go on because my wife is there, and so I'm kneeling in the bedroom or standing with my head on the dresser, and I just can't figure it out. I'm so frustrated with myself, so upset with just, God, I can't believe my wife is watching me panic about, and I don't even know what to tell her. Like, I don't even know what I'm panicked about. But this is where I learned the lesson. Even in those moments, I can trust Jesus, even when I don't know what monster I'm facing. Even when it's nameless and faceless, I can still trust Jesus more than I trust anybody else. Paul writes this in the book of Romans. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. In other words, Jesus is saying, remember that phrase I told you, that in this world you'll have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world? He's saying, because I've overcome the world, no matter what you go through or no matter what you experience, if I have called you and you are in love with me, if you've given your life to me, I can take any experience you've gone through that's been forced on you or that you've chosen for yourself in a mistake, and I can use it for good. So I can take the worst mistakes and decisions of your life and I can leverage them for good. I can turn the dirtiest laundry into the most incredible piece of art. I promise you. He's saying, because I've overcome the world, I have that ability. And so, yes, I have not overcome your free will. Continue to make your choices. But when you are ready to give all of those things to me, when you're ready to trust me with your mistakes and the mistakes done to you, I promise I can make those into something good. Trust. I don't understand how this is going to work out. And I see no possible conclusion where this comes out in any kind of my favor. But I'm going to be okay because I trust Jesus more than I trust anything else. Even the logical conclusions sometimes in my brain from the experience and the book knowledge I have, and I've slammed them together, and it just doesn't make sense. But I'm still going to trust Jesus. We have to get to a place where things might not always go well, but we trust they will all end well. Things might not always go well, but we trust they will all end well. And we trust that because we know that good has the final say. And that Jesus is not just the Prince of Peace, he is goodness himself. And he has the final say. You're not looking for peace. You're just trying to skip to the good part. Don't. The process begins with trusting. The result of you truly trusting is a peace that makes no sense in any book or any life experience. You can't skip to the result without going to the process. So stop asking Jesus for peace. Start asking yourself, how can I trust Jesus more? Peace will come. So will all the bad things that are still on our plate. But the kind of peace that passes all understanding and logic can coexist with those bad things because we recognize things don't always go well, but we trust they will always end well because Jesus has the final say.